All right, so I filled out the rest of the table, but I want you to know where it all comes from. So let's take a look at it. I'll have to redo it. So you had 10,000 people total that we were going to look at. Now, what proportion of them are actually going to be sick? Well, it said up here, 1 out of every 1,000 people. See that? That's 1 out of 1,000. So what I did was I multiplied 1 out of 1,000 times D4, times that cell right there, which means I'm going to have 10 people out of every 10,000 that are actually sick, that are actually having HIV. And that means 9,990 don't have HIV. Cool. All right, then they said that they have a test that comes back positive 99% of the time for a person that really has the disease. So what I did was I multiplied, oopsie, you multiply 99%, 0.99 times 10, B4. Cool. So that means that 9.9 out of those 10 people will come back with a positive HIV test, which is good because they really have the disease and we want them to know that. And only 0.1 will come back with a negative result even though they're actually sick. Now keep in mind, that means that that actually happens. Sometimes people are actually sick and not told that. Right? In particular, that happened with HIV. There are a couple known cases where in the early days when they didn't know what it was that these people had, they told them they were fine when they weren't. All right, so now let's go to the 9,990 people. All right, so here we also get some false positives. Any tests where they draw blood from you or do urine analysis or whatever, there's a chance that they could do it wrong for whatever reason. Sometimes it's just your body chemistry. It just doesn't work with the particular test that they're running. So that means that 2% of the time, so 0.02 times that 9,990, you're going to come back with a false positive. And that means the rest of the people, 9,790 of them, are going to be told they're negative, and they actually are negative. Now, keep in mind, this cell and this cell are correct, right? These people up here, 9.9, are sick and actually being told they're sick. And down here, these people are not sick and are told they're not sick. But what's really interesting to us is these two in relation to each other, okay? So let's look at that. Oh, and this cell, right, this table right here is the answer to that first question. Oopsie. Okay. You tested positive. What are the chances of you actually having the disease? So the doctor comes back and says, hey, you've got a positive result on this test. Okay, so what's the probability that you are actually sick? It's the probability that you are HIV positive given that you tested positive. Okay, according to the rules for conditional probability, that's equal to, and you can go back and look at it, it's the number of ways you could be HIV positive and test positive divided by the number of ways you can test positive, which from our table is equal to 9.9. There's 9.9 people that are both positive and they test positive, divided by the total that test positive, which is 209.7. And let's just see what that is. .0472. Did you catch that? You have a positive test result. The probability that you actually have the disease, given that you have a positive test result, is only 0.047. Really small. Now, the reason this is such an important case, of course, is this really happens for things that are rare. One of the reasons this works is because the disease in America is so rare to begin with. There's only 10 out of every 10,000 people that would have this disease. Therefore, the number of false positives, the 199, is totally going to outweigh the real positives. If it was a disease that's much more common, this is going to not be the case. It would not nearly be like this. The other issue, of course, is they never do anything like this really in a vacuum, at least not for HIV. I mean, they would ask you your medical history and your sexual partners and stuff. But drug testing where they don't know anything about you, this could happen, right? You could get a positive test result for a drug test and you actually didn't do anything, right? Just keep that in mind. All right, so that's where we are for that. We'll come back for the next page.